move on to item number 6. Today, today we have 3 guests. We have Sherman Kong from AMIC Inc. We have Valerie Moses from the Women's Building Future, and also Steve Bulagia from PLC. Now, these 3 organizations have gotten together and formed a very unique partnership that they're going to talk about today. Um, I will get our guests to introduce themselves to us, tell us who they are, rather than me reading a piece of paper. That's going to be more interesting and interactive. And we're really excited to hear about the partnership that they've created, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot from what they've done and try and get some partnerships going here in Thompson as well. So without much further ado, I'll hand the floor over to you guys.
So my name is Sherman Kong. I'm with AMIC. E.J. Fontaine is one of the founders of AMIC. So we're based in Winnipeg, but the reach of work that we do is national. So I won't really talk too much about myself, but I would like to talk about why we're here and specifically why we're here together. So the work that AMIC does, what originally started out as Canada's first Indigenous job board has since, over the years, morphed into more of a professional Indigenous engagement range of services. So we do things like cultural sensitivity training, we do smart work ethics training, which is a nationally recognized program. So it focuses on soft skills. We do customized Indigenous recruitment and recommendations on behalf of, in large part, non-Indigenous organizations. And then we've also been a pioneer in offering cultural support to the companies that we work with to support our Indigenous candidates. So we've worked with companies like CN Rail, Great West Life, Assiniboine Credit Union. We're now starting to develop partnerships with Women Building Futures and PCL Construction. And we've also had some discussions with the Ballet as well up here in Thompson. So we wanted to come up and show our commitment to the city of Thompson and also express to you kind of what our purpose of being here together is. And so I know we don't have much time, but if I could paint for you perhaps a hypothetical situation that is perhaps quite realistic. So in terms of helping the city with your vision going forward and how we might be able to support you in that in a collaborative method is, say for example you have a capital project of some sort that you're looking at undertaking, and Indigenous inclusion and engagement is a concern. So how might that look, and how would you address those concerns and whatnot, training being another one, and things that are important to the community. So our view is that if we can collaborate and work together as a team, where everyone just kind of maintains their specialty and just keeps doing what they're doing, we can accomplish a lot more in a much more efficient manner, in a way that's respectful to the community and really listening to what they want. And so with the MIC, what we can offer is the Indigenous engagement piece. So making sure that gap between communities and industry is properly addressed. In terms of training, and in specific for women, Indigenous women, that's something that Val can speak to. And then finding a sincere partner that is capable of building what it is, for example, that you need to get built, but that's also very sensitive and sincere towards community engagement. There's a partner in PCL Construction. So what we figured through this partnership is, if through this journey you have some potholes, and if one of the potholes is training, capacity building, another pothole is community engagement, Indigenous inclusion, and another one is finding a sincere partner for building and hiring and listening to the community's needs. We can fill each of those individually in a way that's collaborative, very harmonious, and very efficient. And so, like I said, that's who we are, but this is more why we're here together, is just to help you and know that there's a group here that we hope you will reach out to, because we would really like to be part of anything, with the city in terms of moving forward, and we can assist in any way to fill those gaps. It's what we would like to do. So maybe I'll pass it on to Val.
Sure. Hi everyone, thanks so much for having us. My name is Val Moses and I'm the Senior Strategist of Indigenous Relations for Women Building Futures. We are based in Edmonton, but we are national as well in scope. I'm really excited about the conversation that we're having with PCL and with AMIC, primarily because it really supports multi-stakeholder partnerships. And when we share in common, I believe as partners, is the understanding that you don't have to be good at everything. If you really focus your capacity and your interest in a specific area and find partners who complement in the areas where you have gaps, there's far greater success and efficiency and reach. I think what's important to all of us is that we support the asset building and capacity building in the city of Thompson. So something that we believe in and what the organization is that I work for is about giving women opportunity that they might not have access to. So we go out and we attract women, including Indigenous women, to trades and occupations that they may not see themselves in. Through those opportunities, we train women who have no relevant experience or lots of relevant experience to employment opportunities. So we are not in the game of training for training's sake and building skill sets. We're in the business of developing careers based on what opportunities are in demand. So we work with folks like AMIC and like PCL to cohesively plan strategically so that we're attracting women to occupations that are going to be in demand in the area where there's projects being built.
Well said. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you very much for having us here. My name is Steve Belaige. I'm with PCL and I'm the Business Development Manager for the Winnipeg region. As you may know, PCL is the largest construction company in Canada and I think the 6th largest in the US. And we're right across Canada, and we're making a strategic plan to outreach to northern communities and Indigenous communities and really promoting inclusion. And that's why PCL as a company have taken on the partnerships with these good folks beside me, because we've had projects in the past and we've tried to promote inclusion and so on. It's a very difficult process. It's not something that's very easy. We're contractors, we're builders, and we're not very good at what these folks are very good at. And so that's why this partnership is so successful, because we can cover all the aspects of what needs to be done to promote a good, healthy work environment and giving great exposure to a lot of the Indigenous people in terms of exposure to carpentry and all the different facets of construction, and also reaching out to the communities for partnership opportunities as well too. So that's why we're here today. Does anybody have any questions?
So do you want, sorry, would you like to give us an example of what projects you've collaborated on and what the outcomes have been so far?
I could speak to one, and locally here, so the UCN project, PCL, my company, built that project, and we did have an inclusion program there. So right in your backyard, we've already accomplished a fairly successful project, and a fairly large project in this community. So that's one example that I can give you, and I think, Sherman, you could probably talk about a lot more of those.
Yeah, with UCN as well, that's another partnership that AMIC has locally here as well. But I think kind of the spirit of why we're here is to say, we would like to perhaps bring some more awareness to this type of synergy, to propagate any type of projects or visions that you guys might have for the future, and just bring some more awareness to how we could possibly fit in and help. So kind of going back to that hypothetical situation, let's say that project that you guys are looking at doing maybe a couple years out, how do we make sure that there's some capacity in terms of like a skilled workforce? How do we build that up? Who's going to do that? Where do we find them? And then once they're found and trained up, perhaps through development sales organization, how do we make sure that there's community engagement, right? So that's where MIC would come in and help facilitate that process between the community, understanding what's important to them, so that groups like PCL are very aware of what's really important. And Steve and his colleague David, who's going to be arriving tomorrow as well, have been very clear in saying, you know, we really do want to understand what it is exactly that's important to the community. So whether it's childcare, transportation, whatever the case may be, they want to know about that up front. But oftentimes, and I think you kind of alluded to it before, Steve, right, where sometimes that community engagement can get lost in translation. So that's kind of one of a mixed roles, is to kind of help facilitate that process, so that things that could have proactively been addressed early on are, so that they don't flare up 6 months to a year down the road and then cause all kinds of problems. So it's a very proactive, collaborative approach. And then again, finding good, sincere partners who can actually do the work and the hiring and all that kind of stuff. Because that's another thing, like, well, what about jobs and hiring and this, that, and the other? So to be very clear, you know, at the end of the day, although recruitment and all those kind of things are things that AMIC does, through employment partners, we don't actually hire anybody. We're part of the piece of the puzzle, but we don't actually hire anybody, neither does WBF. But it would be a group like PCL. So everybody kind of has a role. So if we can make your life easier by providing, I don't know if calling it a turnkey solution would be the right way to say it, but if we can provide a framework and a team who you can rely on to address a lot of these gaps, you know, that's what we would really be interested in helping.
Valerie, you might want to talk about some of your experiences with PCL and in some of the other provinces and so on, some of the success rates that you've experienced.
Sure. One of the projects that I think I'm most proud of to have had the opportunity to work on is the Northwest Refinery in Alberta. So we worked really closely with PCL as well as the building trades and other prime contractors and the owner of the project. And we trained women for the trade of iron workers. And that's the trade we initially started with. We ended up going into quite a few different occupations as well after that. But you know, things like training to employment opportunities and exposure to trades you've never perhaps really known well yourself, what that actually means in terms of economic security for a lot of women, it's difficult to explain. So from a metrics perspective, there was an average of a 220% increase in income on the first day of hire for the women who graduated that 8-week program. So in 8 weeks, there was opportunity, and what I believe this is about, what WBF stands for, is choice. Giving women choice to have the skills that are in demand and to choose what career path they want to take with those skills. So for a lot of women, that turns into entrepreneurship and lots of other opportunities, senior leadership roles in the future. And I think what's really exciting about this partnership and I think the model that we're talking about is the opportunity to bring the industry partner who's going to hire at the end to the table in the planning process. The opportunity to bring folks like AMIC who do such a great job of navigating on behalf of First Nations and in support of First Nations with industry and other training providers like WBF to the same table. And sometimes I think we get caught up in reacting to opportunity by trying to build our own capacity even larger. And it's great to be good at a lot of things, but sometimes it's better to be great at one thing. And I think that's what we've all kind of learned through our experience, is really how to build our expertise in a particular area and build great partnerships to make up for the areas that aren't our expertise. And I think that's what this conversation is about for me.
Sorry.
One question I had was, we tried doing women in non-traditional jobs probably about 12 years ago, and it was a partnership with Smoke Construction, and a lot of you know who Smoke Construction is in the north. And those women did on-the-job training. The biggest part, and we finally found Smoke to agree, the biggest issue and hardship we had was trying to find a construction company that was willing to let the women go on the machinery, you know, because those are big, you know, high-cost machinery. And when the project was over, they were happy. They said that those women were a lot more careful than some of the guys and became more successful at it. And that program was 12, 14 years ago now, I can't remember exactly. But some of those graduates from that program are now working out at kiosks and places like that. So like it can be successful. The key is to find those partners that are willing to let their equipment be used and stuff like that.
I think we're here to say that. I think we're here to say that, you know, we'd like to approach the community and let them know exactly what we're doing, what our goals are. And our goals are long-term. Like, I'll give you a small example of a small project that we did in Winnipeg. And so UCN here is a fairly large project, but you can apply these to smaller projects as well too. So we partnered with the government, and we built a 19-unit residential apartment block, if you will. And one of the goals was to have inclusion in that project. And so we did that, and we documented all the hours from all the sub-trades and so on that participated in that job. And we were able to successfully have 10% inclusion on that project. And out of that, the big success story there is that out of that came 4 permanent sustainable careers, not just jobs moving, labor jobs moving material from here to there or cleaning floors, but we had 4 really great jobs from that. One person became a painter, the other a carpenter, the other one was a siding applicator. And then the one I like the most, there was a young Aboriginal woman. She was became a plumber, and the Free Press, the Winnipeg Free Press, did a story on her because they were so happy about that. And our client, the government, was thrilled about the net results from that project. So that's what we want to replicate here in this community and going forward. And we want to do it in a big way. So those success stories are really what drives us to why we're here and why we want to continue. So I love to hear that story that you just told about those success rates. And I think as a community, as a company, as a good corporate citizen, we're all responsible to do that. And we want to take the initiative and do that.
Okay.
Greg, you've done good work for PCL doing the UCN campus.
Thank you.
Wonderful project. I know Doug Corbin also.
Oh, yes. Right.
With your company, PCL, how many employees do you have?
Across Canada or in Winnipeg?
Well, let's say Winnipeg.
Well, in Winnipeg, we have 200 salaried staff.
So you would have an HR department,
Sorry?
human resources.
Yes, we do.
department,
Yes.
of course.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I was waiting to see a manager of a local fast food franchise and was on the phone, so I was just standing there waiting. I looked at their employee bulletin board and there was a message from the owner to his staff. It went something like this: whoever's putting hamburger patties in employee shoes, would you stop that? My 2-year-old child doesn't get stupid things like that. And I laughed at it and I realized his whole business was being run by teenagers, right? Who would put meat patties in people's shoes as they go home or whatever. And the point is that lots of times small independent operators in Thompson, who maybe have 1 to 5 to 7 employees, are struggling like crazy just to keep people to show up for work. And their difficulty is, do they have time to do the kind of training and capacity building you're talking about, or how much paperwork does it take? And that's part of the problem here, is that businesses, small business owners, are strapped, and they're struggling with the best employees they can get.
Yeah.
And the work you're doing, I think, is awesome, but how you filter that down to small companies who are waking up in the middle of the night wondering how they're gonna do their payroll next week, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As opposed to a large company like yourself.
Well, you're right about that, and it's easier for larger companies to do that because they have more resources to do that with. And you know, these projects are not easy to do. It takes a cost from the company's standpoint as well too, in terms of resources and training and so on. And you know, we're interested in doing that because we see the benefits, and we benefit from that. Like, we hired one of the carpenters that's an excellent carpenter, and that was our benefit from doing that project. You know, so not only are you doing good for other people, but you're serving yourself as well too. It's a bit self-serving as well too.
Well, I understand. If it's successful for you, that's great. But the challenge was, I do a lot of consulting work with small businesses, and they're in a different frame of mind
For
sometimes
sure.
in Hydro or Valley or the big employers.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet they still have to deal with the same issues: training staff, recruiting staff, retaining staff, and that's part of the problem here all the time. The turnover in Thompson and North is tremendous. Right?
I I know something we've done in the past to address the needs of smaller, mid-sized businesses without HR departments or lots of resources sometimes is to work with organizations like the Chamber. So to provide kind of, smart work ethics or that type of training so that different folks didn't have to build their own capacity to offer that training as a retention support measure. They could collaborate with other business owners who were going through the same kind of situation. So it was a lower investment and still that high return that was reflective of what their needs are at the time.
I think further to that point, it's the challenge here is that we may get applicants, but to get quality applicants in any of the smaller businesses in town is so challenging. So, for example, the job fair that happened a couple of weeks ago, I got, out of all the people that came through there was one person, out of all of them, maybe 5 of them even had resumes with them. One person that I would even consider interviewing. It was such a poor showing, and I think that's a huge problem in our community is people that are actually ready to work and understand how to apply for a job, what's appropriate to wear when they're applying for a job, what their resumes should say, how they're going to get to work if they get that job, right? I think that preparing that community, or the entire community, and I'm not saying a specific group of people, everybody, it's a problem, so.
Maybe I could share an example of some of the work that AMIC has done to address some of those very challenges that you speak of. So soft skills has been something that a lot of the employment partners that we work with, it's been something that they've identified as huge in terms of being in demand. They need to find people with the right type of soft skills. They're not so concerned these days anymore about education, particularly. Not that it's not a factor. Hard technical skills. So from their point of view, there's plenty of people out there that often have the hard technical skills that are required for the job, but in a lot of cases, because companies often have an in-house training program, somebody with no skills can be taught, right? But the problem is, even if you have those skills and those proficiencies in whatever it may be, if you never show up for work, or you're always late, or you can't get along with anybody, this, that, and the other, it doesn't matter how good you are at X, you're gone. And so one of the things that we kind of proactively did is we brought on the Smart Work Ethics training program that we have. So that, like I said earlier, it's a nationally recognized program. We offer it in 2 different ways, so either as a participant course, or we can do a train the trainer. So like Val was saying, it's an option that allows for a little bit more flexibility. It could perhaps be a little bit cheaper. And it allows you to basically change your behavior, or change the behavior of the participants of the course, right? So, everything from, like you're saying, what's a proper dress code on a construction site versus in a bank, right? Why it's important to show up on time a little bit earlier, because if if you start work at 8:30, your boss expects you to start hitting the keyboard at 8:30, not walk in the door, take your jacket off, get coffee, see how your friend's weekend was, that type of thing. And it goes through a whole spectrum of even, understanding what your personality is, so that you can understand how people interpret you and view you, and how you can better understand someone else based on kind of their personality. It's like a whole psychological thing. So it's really beneficial in terms of how to just get along in the workplace, how to change your behavior and your attitude towards, if your boss asks you to do something, instead of kind of moaning and groaning about why am I being asked to do something that's outside of my job description, maybe it's that your boss trusts you a little bit more and is maybe testing you, right, to see if you're up to the challenge, and maybe look at it as an opportunity to prove yourself, right? So it's like a changing behavior. And so one of the partners that we have, Assiniboine Credit Union, who we do their Indigenous recruitment for, they value that program so much that they make sure that the candidates that we hire, the Indigenous candidates that we place for them, are on the payroll and take our Smart Work Ethics trainings, the soft skills training, before they hit the Assiniboine Credit Union training. Because they want to have the most well-rounded candidate they can possibly get, We do the training, they don't care, but they want to make sure that that candidate has the soft skills, so they show up on time, they're professional, they get along, that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things that a MIC also does.
If I may just add to that, all the challenges that you spoke about are the challenges that we have as an employer coming into a community and trying to hire. And that's exactly why we're here with these partners, because they're very good at that and we are not. We're good builders, we're constructors. We can give people opportunities in the field, but we can't do all the things that he just talked about.
Can't get them ready for those
Exactly,
opportunities.
exactly. And there's a lot of nuances that are even more than what he described. So it's difficult, and that's why we make a
Well, it
really
sounds
good
like- It
partnership.
sounds like a great program for
Yeah.
that reason.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you certainly don't want EJ and I to build anything.
I handed him the hammer, and he was holding the wrong end for that. It won't work.
I think the key to what you're saying is skills or communication. Attitude is more difficult.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
You go up to work with time and work ethic
Yeah.
part, that's the difficult. Sometimes if that hasn't been brought into
Yeah.
your upbringing,
Sure.
then it's a little difficult when you're 20 or 25 or 30. Preach that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really difficult when you're in a mindset of how am I going to make time to do payroll and how am I going to make time to do all these other things, to take time to be proactive about retention measures. But quite frankly, turnover costs everyone, and small or large. And a lot of people don't realize that, like, large-scale industrial projects, no one bats an eye at the percentage that people forecast for turnover, and it's pretty significant. And that's reflective in a different kind of framework for a small-sized business as well, right? How much of your time are you compensating for people who have lower skill sets who aren't showing up? And those types of things can be avoided if you make that time to send someone to a full-day workshop or half-day workshop in the beginning. And I think it's tough sometimes to make that decision in the moment, but I think if you try to take a step back and look at how much time you're spending dealing with the aftermath of choosing not to do that, that sometimes it's certainly worth it.
Steve, do you guys have projects that will be coming to the north in the near future?
None that I can think of offhand, no. But we've done a lot of northern projects. Like we've built schools and so on, and obviously the college. But throughout northern Manitoba and northern Ontario, we've built many schools for sure. Yeah.
Just wanted to add to the Smart Work Ethics training program that we have. Another thing that we do that we've been quite well known for is the cultural sensitivity training to non-Indigenous businesses. So kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of that growth behind Indigenous inclusion and the awareness that's growing every day around it. And so I'll give you an example, like with CN Rail, we started with their cultural sensitivity training before the TRC even came out with their recommendations. So a long time ago. We've trained over 400 of their staff. 1,200? 1,200 of their staff, including executives. And so the cultural sensitivity piece is pretty key when we're talking about this Indigenous inclusion and partnering with groups like PCL, just to make sure the mindset is there. So if they're really sincere about Indigenous inclusion, whether it's from a recruitment standpoint or engaging the communities and this, that, and the other, to have a proper understanding of the Indigenous culture, the nuances, some of the systemic barriers that are at play, really makes the transition and rolling out of that kind of initiative a whole lot easier if that mindset is there, especially if it comes from the top down. Then it makes it really easy to kind of understand, oh, this is my new Indigenous colleague, or this is perhaps my new Indigenous market. So, for example, the business case for a lot of companies, strictly from a business point of view, is, as the fastest growing demographic in the country, sooner or later, my colleague is going to be Indigenous, or more and more, my customers are going to be Indigenous. So if I can be proactive, through cultural sensitivity training or customized recruitment initiatives and things of that nature, you're kind of going to be ahead of the curve, right? Because a lot of people refer to the Indigenous community as an untapped market. But if you don't understand kind of just the basics, then it's going to be hard to unroll something that's quite, it can be like Steve was alluding to earlier, it's complicated, that Indigenous engagement piece. So, you know, if you start with a good foundation of cultural sensitivity training, it can make things a lot easier.
We'll be actually delivering that to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in September.
Okay, I
We
just
got a
remembered
chance
that.
to deliver the
The
training.
cap, thank you, well, bad.
How we got in there was through the Vice President of Industrial Products at CN. She's a board member on the Canadian Chamber. So we delivered the training to her and the executives. She says we need to get this into other chambers. So that's how we got involved. And what's nice about the training is people get a good understanding of what the challenges are, what the barriers, why don't people apply to you for jobs? There's some systemic issues behind that. And the training we deliver is very practical. It's able to educate you on why some of those challenges are there and how to get around them. So, keeping in mind that Thompson, there's tons of communities around here, and there's actually some good employees if you approach it right. You'll find some really good people that will be great loyal employees to big or small.
Any other questions? If not, I'd like to thank all of you for coming up here and talking to us about your partnerships. Now, for the smaller businesses that Voka alluded to, is there any specialized training that you have that we can access? Because I have a small business, I have 6 employees. Like Voka says, I wear different hats, and sometimes I have to, do the work myself. So how do we access AMIC or Women for Building Futures? How do we do that at a local, very small scale level?
Yeah, so that's something that I can, share my contact information with you later.
Okay.
And then we can talk about getting some training up here, how that might look.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we would work the same. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Well, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.